Welcome to Saga Dream Tales, the place where you can relax, unwind, and drift into calm stories shaped by ancient worlds. Here, every tale moves slowly, carried by soft words and peaceful rhythm, made to ease your mind and guide you into a quiet space. In today's journey, we follow Thor as he walks through the Nine Realms, where thunder rolls gently across golden skies and mighty strength serves only to protect. His path is endless, constant, and filled with the quiet devotion of the eternal guardian. All you need to do now is sit back, breathe deeply, and let the story unfold at its own slow pace. Close your eyes if you wish, let your body settle into comfort, and allow yourself to be carried away to a time when God stood watch over peaceful valleys and every storm held sacred purpose. The journey begins now. In the ancient days before memory, when the world was young and wild, there lived a god of thunder, whose name echoed across the Nine Realms. His name was Thor, and his story winds through time like a river through mountains, steady and eternal. Thor was born in the golden halls of Asgard, the realm of the gods. His father was Odin, the All-Father, wise and ancient. His mother was Jord, the earth itself, strong and patient. From his father, Thor received the power of the sky. From his mother, he received the strength of stone and soil. These two gifts made him mighty among all beings. The young Thor grew tall and broad, with arms like tree trunks and a heart that knew no fear. His hair shone red like autumn leaves, and his beard grew thick and wild. His eyes held the color of storm clouds, sometimes gray, sometimes blue, always watching. He was not the wisest of the gods, nor the most clever, but his strength was beyond measure, and his courage never wavered. The halls of Asgard stood magnificent under the endless sky. Golden towers reached upward, their peaks touching clouds. Wide bridges connected mighty buildings, and everywhere there was light and warmth. The gods gathered in these halls, feasting and telling stories, celebrating their power and glory. But Thor often looked beyond the walls, toward the wild world that stretched in every direction. Beyond Asgard lay Midgard, the realm of humans. It was a place of forests and fields, mountains and seas, where mortal people lived their brief lives. Thor loved Midgard, for it reminded him of his mother, the earth. He watched over the humans with care, protecting them from dangers they could not face alone. For beyond Midgard, in the cold and distant places, lived the giant. These beings were older than the gods, ancient as winter itself. They dwelled in Jotunheim, a realm of ice and stone, where mountains touched the sky and glaciers carved deep valleys. The giants were vast and terrible, and many of them hated the gods with a cold and patient hatred. To protect Midgard and Asgard, Thor needed a weapon worthy of his strength. The dwarves, master craftsmen who lived deep beneath the mountains, forged such a weapon. They worked in their underground halls, where fires burned eternal and hammers rang against anvils day and night. With magic and skill beyond mortal understanding, they created Mjolnir. Mjolnir was a hammer unlike any other. Its handle was short, made from the wood of the world tree itself. Its head was forged from metal, found in the heart of a fallen star. When Thor lifted it, lightning danced along its surface. When he threw it, it flew straight and true, striking with the force of an avalanche. And always, it returned to his hand, drawn back by magic that could not be broken. Thor also wore special gloves, iron gauntlets that allowed him to grip Mjolnir's handle without burning his hands from the weapon's power. Around his waist he wore a belt that doubled his already tremendous strength. With these gifts, Thor became the defender of gods and humans alike. The thunder god traveled often to Midgard, riding across the sky in a chariot pulled by two great goats. Their names were Tangrisnir and Tangjoster, and they were no ordinary animal. They ran through the air itself, their hooves creating thunder as they galloped. When Thor needed food on his journeys, he could cook and eat the goats, then resurrect them the next morning by blessing their bones with his hammer. This way, he never traveled hungry. One of Thor's earliest battles took him far to the east, where a giant named Hrungnir lived. Hrungnir was the strongest of all giants, with a body made of stone and a heart shaped like a jagged rock. He carried a massive whetstone as a weapon and boasted that no one could defeat him. The challenge came about through a series of boasts and threats, as these things often did. Odin had visited Jotunheim on his 8-legged horse, and Hrungnir had chased him back to Asgard, claiming his own horse was faster. When Hrungnir reached the halls of the gods, they offered him drink to calm his anger. But the giant drank too much mead and began to boast loudly, threatening to destroy Asgard and take the goddess Freya as his bride. Thor arrived during these threats, his anger rising like a storm. He challenged Hrungnir to single combat, and the giant accepted, his pride too great to refuse. They agreed to meet at a place called Grjotunagard, on the border between the realms. The giants feared for Hrungnir. Despite his strength, they knew Thor's reputation and had heard stories of his might. So they crafted a helper for their champion, a giant made entirely of clay, standing 9 leagues tall, with a heart taken from a dead mare. This clay giant stood beside Hrungnir, silent and terrible. Thor came to the appointed place with his servant Jolfi, a young man swift as the wind. When Jolfi saw the 2 giants waiting, he used his cleverness to help his master. He ran ahead to Hrungnir and told him that Thor planned to attack from beneath the ground, bursting up through the earth with his hammer. Believing this trick, Hrungnir stood upon his stone shield rather than holding it before him. This was his first mistake. When Thor appeared, he came not from below, but from the sky, thunder announcing his arrival. Lightning flashed, and rain began to fall, for storms followed Thor, like shadows follow light. The clay giant, called Mökkurkalfi, tried to fight, but fell quickly. Its dead heart gave it no courage, and Thjalfi destroyed it without much effort, breaking it apart into pieces of mud and clay that scattered across the ground. Thor and Hrungnir faced each other across the rocky field. The giant threw his massive whetstone with all his strength, sending it spinning through the air like a millstone. At the same moment, Thor threw Mjolnir, the hammer flying true and straight. The 2 weapons met in midair with a crash like the breaking of mountains. The whetstone shattered into 1,000 pieces. Some fragments fell to earth and became the whetstones that humans use to sharpen their tools. One large piece flew toward Thor and struck him in the forehead, embedding itself there as he fell to his knee. But Mjolnir did not stop. It continued forward, unbroken and unstoppable, and struck Hrungnir in his stone skull. The giant's head shattered like a dropped pot, and his massive body fell forward, one leg landing across Thor's neck, pinning him to the ground. The other gods came running when they heard the battle was over. They tried to lift the giant's leg, but it was too heavy even for their divine strength. Thor lay trapped beneath it, unable to free himself. His strength had left him after the hard blow to his head. Then came Magni, Thor's young son, only 3 nights old, but already showing tremendous power. The boy walked up to the fallen giant and lifted the leg with ease, freeing his father. Thor was amazed and proud, knowing his son would grow to be mighty. A wise woman was called to remove the whetstone from Thor's forehead, but this is a story that winds into other tales. What matters is that Thor survived, and Hrungnir, the strongest of giants, was defeated. Many seasons passed, and Thor's reputation grew with each battle. He traveled the 9 realms, always ready to fight those who threatened peace. Giants learned to fear the sound of thunder, knowing it might herald the arrival of the red-bearded god. One winter, Thor undertook a journey that would become one of the most famous stories told around fires on cold nights. He traveled to Jotunheim with Loki, the trickster god, and 2 human servants, Jolfi and his sister Röskva. They sought the hall of Utgard Loki, the king of the outer giants. The journey was long and difficult. They crossed rivers of ice and climbed mountains that scraped the sky. As night fell on the first day, they searched for shelter and found what appeared to be a great hall, empty and strange. The hall had 5 rooms branching from the main chamber, and the doorway was so wide they could enter without opening any door. They settled in the main chamber to sleep, but throughout the night, the earth shook with terrible tremors. Strange roaring sounds echoed around them, and the very ground seemed to breathe. Thor kept Mjolnir ready, expecting an attack, but nothing came through the darkness. When dawn arrived, they left the hall and discovered the truth of their shelter. What they had thought was a hall was actually the glove of a giant so massive that his glove alone could house 4 travelers. The 5 rooms were the thumb and 4 fingers. The giant himself lay sleeping nearby, and his snoring had caused the earth to shake and roar. The giant woke and stood, rising like a mountain growing toward the sky. He told them his name was Skrimir, which meant big fellow, and he was indeed enormous even among giants. He offered to travel with them, and they accepted, though they felt small as ants walking beside him. Skrimir carried all their provisions in his pack, and walked ahead with great strides. By evening, he had led them deep into a dark forest where ancient trees blocked out the stars. The giant lay down beneath an oak, and immediately fell asleep. Thor and his companions tried to open the pack to get their food, but found the knots impossible to untie. Skrimir had tied them with some trick of magic, or simply with such strength that even Thor could not loosen them. Hunger and frustration built in Thor's chest like gathering storm cloud. Unable to wake the sleeping giant with words, Thor took Mjolnir and struck Skrimir on the head. The blow would have shattered a mountain, but the giant merely stirred, mumbled something about a leaf falling on his face, and returned to sleep. Later in the night, the giant's snoring grew so loud that trees trembled and birds flew from their nests. Thor struck him again, harder this time, the hammer sinking deep. Skrimir sat up, rubbed his head, and asked if an acorn had fallen on him. Then he lay back down and slept. Before dawn, Thor struck a 3rd time with all his might. The hammer's head sank so deep into the giant's skull that Thor felt it might disappear entirely. Skrimir woke, touched his head, and wondered aloud if birds might be roosting in the tree above him, dropping twigs down onto his forehead. Then he said farewell, and walked away into the morning mist, leaving the travelers confused and Thor feeling something he rarely experienced: doubt in his own strength. By midday, they reached Utgard, a castle so vast that its walls disappeared into clouds. The gates stood open, and they entered to find a hall filled with giants of every size, all enormous, all terrible. On a throne at the far end sat Utgard Loki himself, king of this realm. The king greeted them with courtesy that felt like mockery. He noted how small Thor appeared, how unlike the mighty legends told about him. He suggested that if Thor and his companions wished to stay, they must prove themselves, for in Utgard, everyone must excel at some skill. Loki, always proud, boasted that no one could eat faster than him. The king arranged a contest with one of his servants, a thin fellow named Logi. Long trenches filled with meat were set before them. Loki ate with desperate speed, consuming meat after meat. But when they met in the middle, Loki had eaten not just the meat, but the bones and the wooden trencher as well. Loki was defeated. Young Thjalfi claimed to be the swiftest runner in all the worlds. The king had him race against a small lad named Hugi. They ran 3 races across the vast hall, and in each one, Hugi finished so far ahead that he turned around and met Thjalfi coming back. The boy was defeated. Then came Thor's turn. The king asked what skill the thunder god would demonstrate. Thor said he would drink, for his thirst was legendary, and his capacity beyond measure. The king called for his drinking horn, and handed it to Thor, saying that most people finished it in 1 drink, some needed 2, but no one was so weak they needed 3. Thor looked at the horn. It seemed long, but not impossibly so. He put it to his lips and drank deeply, expecting to empty it. But when he stopped to breathe, the level had barely dropped. He drank again, a longer pull, until his lungs burned and his head swam. The level dropped a bit more, but the horn remained mostly full. A 3rd time he drank, with all his might, until he thought his chest would burst, but still the horn was far from empty. He set it down, ashamed. The king suggested perhaps Thor would like to try something easier. He pointed to a grey cat that wandered the hall, suggesting Thor try to lift it. This seemed a simple task, almost an insult. Thor bent and put his arms around the cat, lifting with his leg. But the cat merely stretched upward as Thor lifted, one paw coming off the ground, but the animal never leaving the floor. No matter how hard Thor strained, he could not lift the cat completely. His face grew red with effort, and sweat beaded on his forehead. Finally, the king suggested one more test. He called for his old nurse, an ancient woman named Ellie, to wrestle with Thor. Surely, the king said with a smile. Thor could defeat an old woman, but when they grappled, Thor found himself unable to move her. She was like stone, like the earth itself. They struggled, and slowly, impossibly, she forced Thor down to one knee. The king stopped the match before Thor was completely thrown, saying that was enough. Defeated and humbled, Thor and his companions prepared to leave at dawn. But as they walked beyond the gates, Utgard Loki appeared before them outside the walls. He told them they would never enter his castle again, for if he had known their true power, he never would have let them in. Then he revealed the truth. Everything had been illusion and magic, tests designed to be impossible. Skrymir in the forest had been him in disguise. Thor's hammer blows had indeed been mighty, and if they had struck the real giant, they would have killed him. Instead, Utgard Loki had placed a mountain between himself and the hammer, invisible to Thor's eyes. In the morning, they would find that mountain, now bearing 3 square valleys where Mjolnir had struck. Loki had not competed against a servant, but against wildfire itself, which consumes everything in its path. Thjalfi had raced against thought, which travels faster than any creature. And Thor's tests had been most impressive of all. The drinking horn had been connected to the ocean itself. Thor had drunk so much that he lowered the sea level, creating the tides that would forever ebb and flow. The cat had been the Midgard serpent, the great snake that wrapped around the world. Thor had lifted it so high that its back touched the sky. And Ellie, the old woman, was old age itself, which defeats everyone in time. That Thor held out against her for even a moment was a feat beyond measure. Thor raised his hammer to strike the king for this deception, but Utgard Loki vanished like morning fog, and his castle with him. The travelers stood in an empty plain with no sign that the castle had ever existed. They returned home with strange knowledge that Thor's true strength was even greater than anyone had known, strong enough to frighten the giants into creating elaborate tricks to avoid facing him directly. The seasons turned, and years passed like leaves falling from trees. Thor continued his endless battle against the giants, defending Midgard and Asgard from threats that came from the cold places of the world. His hammer struck down enemies too numerous to count, and his name became a blessing spoken by humans when storms gathered. There was the time Thor encountered the giant Geirröd, who sought to trap him without his hammer or belt or gloves. A different story told how Thor disguised himself as a young man and journeyed to a wedding, seeking to reclaim his hammer which had been stolen and buried deep in the earth. Each tale added to the tapestry of his legend. But perhaps the most frequent enemy Thor faced was the Midgard serpent itself, Jörmungandr, the great snake that lived in the ocean depths. This creature was one of Loki's children, cast into the sea by Odin in ancient days. It grew so vast that it encircled all of Midgard, holding its tail in its mouth. 3 times in the old stories, Thor and the serpent met. The first time was in Utgard, when Thor unknowingly lifted it disguised as a cat. The second time came when Thor went fishing with a giant named Hymir. Thor had challenged Hymir to see who was braver and stronger. The giant agreed to take Thor fishing, though he doubted the god would be useful. They took Hymir's boat far from shore, out into the deep waters where whales swam, and darkness pooled beneath the surface. Thor baited his hook with the head of an ox, the largest bait ever used. He cast his line far out into the water, and waited. Below, in the darkest depths, the Midgard serpent sensed the bait and rose from the ocean floor. When the serpent took the hook, the line went taut with such force that Thor's hands were pulled against the boat's side. But Thor was strong, stronger than any creature that swam or walked or flew. He braced his feet against the boat's bottom and pulled, his muscles straining, his teeth gritted with effort. The boat nearly capsized from the struggle. Water poured over the sides, and Hymir grew pale with fear. Thor pulled harder, and his feet crashed through the bottom of the boat, finding the ocean floor far below. Standing on the bottom of the sea, braced against the earth itself, Thor hauled the serpent upward. The great snake's head broke the surface, and for a moment, god and monster looked at each other across the churning water. The serpent's eyes burned with hatred, older than mountains. Its mouth opened, revealing fangs like swords and venom that could melt stone. Thor raised his hammer to strike the killing blow. But Hymir, terrified beyond reason, cut the fishing line with his knife. The serpent sank back into the depths, wounded but alive. Thor was so angry he struck Hymir with his fist, knocking the giant overboard. Then Thor waded ashore through the sea, pulling the broken boat behind him. The third meeting between Thor and the serpent would come at the end of all things, at Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. But that time had not yet arrived in these stories, and Thor continued his work protecting the realm. Between his great battles and long journeys, Thor lived in his hall in Asgard. It was called Bilskirna, which meant lightning crack, and it was the largest building in all existence. It had 640 rooms, enough to house every brave warrior who had ever lived, should Thor wish to host them all. Thor had a family of his own. His wife was Sif, whose hair was pure gold, literally made of precious metal that shone like summer wheat. They had children, Magni, whose strength we have seen, and Modi, whose courage matched his father's. Thor also had a daughter named Thrud, whose name meant strength, and who inherited her father's fierce spirit. Life in Asgard followed rhythms, both daily and eternal. The gods gathered often to feast and share stories. They held councils to discuss matters affecting the 9 realms. They watched over Midgard, sometimes helping humans who honored them, sometimes simply observing the brief flickering lives of mortal folk. But always, there were threats. Giants plotted in their frozen halls, seeking ways to destroy Asgard. Trolls crept from under mountains, terrorizing villages. Sea monsters rose from deep waters to capsize ships. And whenever these threats appeared, Thor was ready. He would harness his goats to his chariot, lift his hammer, and ride forth. The sound of thunder announced his coming. Lightning lit his path. Storms gathered at his shoulders like a cloak. He was the protector, the defender, the warrior who never rested while danger remained. The people of Midgard loved Thor above all other gods. He was not distant like Odin, who seemed more interested in wisdom and magic than in ordinary folk. He was not unpredictable like Loki, whose tricks could help or harm without warning. Thor was constant, reliable, strong. He protected farmers from frost giants who would freeze their crops. He defended sailors from sea monsters that would sink their boats. He kept families safe from trolls that would steal children in the night. Humans marked their boundaries with hammers, symbols of Mjolnir, to keep evil away. They named their children after him, hoping they would grow strong and brave. When storms came, they said Thor was fighting giants in the sky, and the thunder was the sound of his hammer striking. Years flowed into decades, decades into centuries. Thor fought on, tireless, eternal. His red beard grew fuller, his arms grew stronger from constant battle, but he did not age as mortals age. Gods measure time differently, and what seemed like endless years to humans was merely the passing of seasons to Thor. He ventured to all the realms in his time. He walked in Alfheim, the land of the light elves, where everything glowed with gentle radiance. He descended into Svartalfheim, where the dark elves and dwarves crafted their wonders in caverns lit by forge fire. He even stood at the borders of Niflheim, the realm of ice and mist, though he did not enter that cold place with a dead wall. But mostly, he traveled between Asgard, his home, and Midgard, his charge. The Rainbow Bridge Bifrost connected these realms, and Thor crossed it countless times, always ready to answer calls for help. One spring, a particular threat came to Midgard that required all of Thor's skill. A giant called Thrym had somehow stolen Mjolnir itself, taking it while Thor slept. When Thor woke and found his hammer missing, his rage shook the halls of Asgard. Without Mjolnir, he was still strong, still dangerous, but he was incomplete. The hammer was part of him, and he part of it. Loki was sent to discover who had taken it. Using his magic, he traveled to Jotunheim and found Thrym boasting of his theft. The giant had buried Mjolnir 8 miles beneath the earth where no one could reach it. He would only return it, he said, if the gods gave him Freya, the beautiful goddess, as his bride. This was impossible. Freya would never agree, and the gods would never force her. But they needed the hammer returned. So they devised a plan, a trick to match the giant's theft. They dressed Thor in bridal clothes, covering his face with a veil and his arms with long sleeves. They hung jewelry around his neck, and put a dress over his broad chest. Loki disguised himself as a bridesmaid. Together, they traveled to Jotunheim, with Thor pretending to be Freya come to marry Thrym. The giant prepared a great feast, delighted that his prize was coming willingly. Thor sat at the feast table, struggling to maintain his disguise. When food was served, he ate an entire ox, ate salmon, and all the delicacies meant for the women, washing it down with 3 barrels of mead. Thrym was amazed at his bride's appetite. Loki quickly explained that Freya had been so excited about the wedding that she had not eaten for 8 days, so naturally she was quite hungry now. Thrym accepted this explanation, eager to believe. When Thrym tried to kiss his bride and lifted the veil, he jumped back in shock at the fierce eyes that glared at him. Loki again intervened, saying that Freya had not slept for 8 nights in her excitement, so her eyes were red and fierce from lack of rest. Finally, satisfied with these explanations, Thrym called for Mjolnir to be brought forth. According to custom, the hammer should be laid in the bride's lap to bless the marriage. The moment the hammer touched Thor's lap, the god's hands shot out and grasped its handle. The disguise was immediately forgotten. Thor stood, his dress tearing from his massive frame. He laughed, a sound like rolling thunder, and began to swing his hammer. Thrym died first, struck down before he could even cry out. Then Thor destroyed every giant in the hall, crashing through them like an avalanche through trees. He recovered his hammer and returned to Asgard victorious, though the other gods laughed for years about seeing Thor in a wedding dress. Thor bore their laughter with good humor, for he had his hammer back, and that was all that mattered. This story became a favorite among humans, told to children to make them laugh, and to remind them that sometimes clever thinking serves better than force, though force has its place too. As more time passed, Thor's deeds became so numerous that no single person could remember them all. Each settlement had its favorite story about how Thor had helped them, or how his power had saved them from some disaster. There was the tale of how Thor protected the harvest from an early frost summoned by frost giants. The farmers had woken one autumn morning to find their fields covered in killing ice, their crops ruined. They prayed to Thor, and he came like a warm wind, his presence melting the frost and chasing the giants back to their frozen realm. The harvest was saved, and that winter, no one went hungry. There was the story of the village by the sea, threatened by a great sea giant who rose from the waves each night to destroy their boat. The villagers could not fish, and without fish, they would starve. Thor heard their prayers and waited on the shore one evening. When the giant rose, Thor waded into the sea to meet it. They fought for hours, god and giant crashing through waves like competing storms. Finally, Thor's hammer found its mark, and the sea giant sank into the depths, never to rise again. There was the tale of the troll that lived under a mountain pass, demanding tribute from all who crossed. It was a cruel creature with a taste for human flesh, and many travelers had vanished into its lair. Thor disguised himself as a simple traveler and approached the troll's bridge. When the troll demanded payment, Thor paid with hammer blows, and the mountain pass was safe thereafter. Each story added to Thor's legend, but they also revealed something about his nature. He was not a god who demanded sacrifices or lived apart from those he protected. He was a worker, a fighter, someone who solved problems by showing up and doing what needed to be done. Humans respected this. They understood it. Thor was mighty beyond their comprehension, but he was also, in some way, like them. Someone who faced challenges and dealt with them directly. The seasons continued their eternal cycle. Spring melted into summer, summer faded to autumn, autumn froze into winter, and winter finally yielded back to spring. Thor marked time by battles fought and threats ended, by journeys taken and dangers overcome. Years meant little to him, but each day had purpose. In Asgard, the other gods pursued their own interests. Odin sought wisdom and knowledge, traveling the realms in disguise, learning secrets, and gathering information for some future purpose he never fully explained. Freya practiced her magic and watched over matters of love and beauty. Tyr, the war god, maintained justice and order. Heimdall stood guard at the Bifrost, his sharp eyes seeing all who approached the realm of God. But Thor remained the defender, the constant guardian. While others schemed or studied or planned, Thor acted. A threat appeared. Thor ended it. Giants massed for attack. Thor scattered them. Monsters terrorized villages. Thor destroyed them. It was simple, direct, and effective. This is not to say Thor was simple-minded. He had wisdom of his own, the wisdom of experience and action. He understood that protection was not just about fighting. It was about being present, being ready, being the wall between danger and those who could not defend themselves. Sometimes Thor would walk through Midgard without his hammer, without thunder or lightning announcing him. He would appear as a large man with a red beard, traveling the roads, stopping at farms and villages. He would share meals with families, listen to their concerns, play with their children. These quiet moments mattered to him as much as the great battles. He learned about human life in these visits. He saw how hard they worked to grow food from the earth, to build homes against the weather, to raise their children and care for their elderly. He saw their joy in simple things. A good harvest, a safe birth, a successful hunt. He saw their fears, hunger, cold, sickness, and the monsters that lurked beyond the firelight. These experiences deepened his commitment to protecting Midgard. The humans were not his subjects or his servants. They were his responsibility, given to him by the nature of what he was. The strongest, the mightiest, the one who could face dangers they could not imagine. Winter came to Midgard again, as it always did. This winter was hard and long, with deep snow and bitter winds. Food grew scarce in many places, and people huddled around their fires, waiting for spring. In the giant realms, the frost giants grew bold, sending their cold magic south to extend the winter, hoping to freeze Midgard entirely. Thor noticed the unnatural length of the cold season. He felt the malice behind it, the intentional cruelty of trying to starve and freeze the humans. His anger rose like a summer storm in his chest. He rode north into Jotunheim, his goats pulling his chariot through snow that would have buried a house. Lightning cracked across the dark sky, and thunder rolled continuously. He was not hiding his approach. He wanted the giants to know he was coming. He found them gathered in a valley, dozens of frost giants working together to maintain their winter spell. They saw him coming and prepared for battle, but they could not match Thor's fury. He crashed into them like a falling star, his hammer swinging in great arcs. Each blow scattered ice and snow. Each strike sent frost giants fleeing or falling. Thor fought with focused intensity, not with wild rage, but with determined purpose. The giants had threatened his charges, and that could not stand. One by one, they fell or retreated. The spell broke. The unnatural cold lifted. By the time Thor returned to Asgard, snow was already melting in Midgard. Within days, spring arrived, late but welcome. Farmers emerged from their homes to find the earth softening, ready for planting. The crisis had passed. These were the kinds of battles that the stories often missed. Not single combat against famous enemies, but the grinding work of maintaining protection, of responding to threats both great and small, of being eternally vigilant. Time continued forward. Thor's children grew to become mighty in their own right. Magni's strength became legendary even among gods. Modi's courage inspired warriors throughout Midgard. Thrud became a force of her own, respected and formidable. Thor took pride in his children, but he never stopped his work to rest on past achievement. There was always another threat, another battle, another journey. The giants never stopped hating the gods. The monsters never stopped breeding in dark places. The chaos of the wild world never paused to rest. And Thor never stopped standing between that chaos and the ordered realms of gods and humans. One summer evening, Thor stood on the walls of Asgard, looking out across the rainbow bridge toward Midgard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of fire and gold. From this height, he could see far across the realm of humans, seeing farms and villages, forests and rivers, mountains and seas. It was beautiful. It was fragile. It was worth protecting. He thought about all the battles he had fought, all the giants he had faced, all the threats he had ended. The number was beyond counting now. Each one had been necessary. Each one had made a difference, even if only a few people knew about it. He thought about his father Odin's words from long ago, that a god's power meant nothing if not used to protect those who could not protect themselves. Thor had taken these words to heart and lived by them every day. He thought about the future, about battles yet to come. The giants still plotted in their icy halls. The Midgard serpent still swam in the deep ocean, growing larger with each passing year. Other threats lurked in the shadows between worlds, waiting for their moment. But Thor was not worried. He was ready. He would always be ready. The hammer Mjolnir hung at his belt, patient and eternal as Thor himself. It had been his companion through countless battles, and would be with him through countless more. Its weight was familiar, comfortable, right? Thunder rumbled in the distance, though the sky was clear. It was simply Thor's presence, his nature expressing itself in the world around him. Where Thor stood, thunder was never far away. He turned from the wall and walked back into the halls of Asgard. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new battles. Tonight, he would feast with his fellow gods, drink mead, and tell stories. Then he would sleep, and when he woke, he would take up his hammer again and continue his eternal work. This was Thor's life, his purpose, his joy. To fight, to protect, to stand between danger and those who needed defending. It was not complicated or mysterious. It was as straightforward as Thor himself, the Thunder God, the giant killer, the protector of Midgard. Red-bearded and mighty, strong beyond measure, brave beyond question. This was Thor, and his story wound through all of Norse mythology like a golden thread through cloth, essential and binding. In Midgard, farmers blessed their fields in his name. Sailors invoked him before launching their boats. Warriors called on his strength before battle. Parents named their children Thorsten and Thorhild, hoping to pass on some measure of his might and courage. And in Asgard, the hammer was always ready, the goats always harnessed, the thunder god always vigilant. The world turned through its seasons and years, and Thor turned with it, constant as the northern star, reliable as sunrise, eternal as the mountain. The giants could plot their plots, the monsters could grow in dark places, the chaos could press against the borders of order, but Thor stood firm, and while he stood, Midgard was protected. This was his gift to the world. Not wisdom like Odin, not beauty like Freya, not justice like Tyr. Just protection, offered freely, maintained constantly, never wavering. And when humans looked up at storm clouds and heard thunder rolling across the sky, they smiled, knowing Thor was near, knowing they were safe. The cycles of the world continued their ancient rhythm. Seasons followed seasons in their appointed order. The moon waxed and waned, marking time for those who watched the sky. The stars wheeled overhead in their eternal pattern. And through it all, Thor remained constant. There were quieter times too, moments between the battles when Thor could rest and reflect. He would sit in his great hall, Sif beside him, and watch the fire burning in the hearth. The flames danced and flickered, casting warm light across the wooden walls. Outside, the wind might howl, or the rain might fall, but inside there was peace. In these moments, Thor thought about what it meant to be a protector. It was not just about strength, though strength was necessary. It was not just about courage, though courage was essential. It was about commitment, about showing up day after day, about being the one who could be counted on when everything else failed. He remembered the faces of people he had helped over the centuries. A farmer whose crops he had saved from frost. A sailor whose ship he had protected from a sea monster. A child who had been lost in the woods, whom Thor had found and carried home. Each face was a reminder of why he did what he did. The gods of Asgard each had their own perspective on the humans of Midgard. Odin saw them as pieces in a great game, players in a drama that would unfold towards some distant conclusion. Loki saw them as amusing diversions, sometimes worthy of help, sometimes worthy of tricks. Freya saw them as creatures of passion and love, interesting in their intensity. But Thor saw them as his people, his responsibility, his reason for being. He did not think of them as lesser beings, despite their short lives and limited power. He thought of them as brave souls, who faced an uncertain world with determination and hope. They deserved protection, and he was honored to provide it. Sometimes Loki would mock him for this devotion, calling him simple or naive. Thor never argued. He simply continued his work. If caring about others made him simple, then he was content to be simple. If protecting the weak made him naive, then he embraced naivety. Words could not hurt him, and criticism could not sway him from his path. Years accumulated like snow on a mountain peak, layer upon layer. Thor's legend grew with each passing generation. New stories joined old ones, creating a tapestry of tales that covered the walls of human memory. Grandparents told these stories to grandchildren, who would someday tell them to their own grandchildren, and on through time. Some stories were grand adventures about fighting massive giants or recovering stolen treasures. Some were smaller tales about helping a single family or saving a single village. Thor made no distinction between them. A threat was a threat, whether it endangered one person or 1,000. Each deserved his attention. There was the story of the farmer whose well had been poisoned by a troll. The farmer had no way to fight the creature, and without water, his family would die. Thor appeared at the farm one evening, as if drawn by the family's need. He went down into the well himself, descending into the cold darkness where the troll lurked. The sounds of battle echoed up from the depths, crashes and roars that shook the earth. When Thor emerged, he was wet and muddy, but the troll was dead, and clean water flowed freely once more. There was the story of the old woman who lived alone at the edge of a village. A spirit had taken residence in her home, causing mischief and fear. The village's warriors were too frightened to help her, and the local wise woman's spells had no effect. The old woman prayed to Thor, not expecting an answer, for she was nobody important. But Thor came anyway, walking up to her small house as an ordinary traveler might. He spent the night there, and in the morning, the spirit was gone, banished by his presence alone. The old woman lived peacefully in her home for the rest of her days. There was the story of the young couple, whose wedding had been interrupted by a band of trolls demanding tribute. The village had no warriors strong enough to fight them, and the trolls threatened to take the bride unless they were paid. Thor arrived during the standoff, dressed in simple traveling clothes. He walked up to the trolls and spoke a single word, "Leave." When they laughed and refused, he revealed himself, and Mjolnir fell upon them like a mountain's weight. The wedding continued that same day, and the celebration was twice as joyful for having been saved. These stories spread throughout Midgard, carried by traveling bards and wandering storytellers. They changed slightly with each telling, details added or removed. But the core remained the same. Thor protected those who could not protect themselves. Thor answered prayers from the desperate. Thor stood between danger and the innocent. The stories reached even the distant corners of Midgard, to islands and far seas and valleys in distant mountains. Everywhere humans lived, they heard about Thor, and hearing about him gave them comfort. They might face hardships, but they were not alone. They might encounter danger, but someone watched over them. They might feel small and powerless, but a god with a hammer cared about their survival. In time, Thor's hammer became more than just a weapon. It became a symbol, a sign of protection and power. Humans carved small hammers from wood or stone and wore them as jewelry. They painted hammers on their shields and ships. They marked their doorways with hammer symbols to ward off evil. The image of Mjolnir spread across Midgard like seeds on the wind, taking root wherever it landed. Thor was pleased by this, though he never sought such honor. He did not protect Midgard for glory or recognition. He did it because it was right, because it was his nature, because he could not imagine doing anything else. But seeing the hammer symbols everywhere reminded him that his work mattered, that it made a difference in the lives of those he protected. The relationship between Thor and the humans of Midgard was unique among the gods. Odin was respected but feared, too mysterious and unpredictable for true affection. Freya was loved, but seemed distant, concerned with matters of the heart that not everyone understood. Tyr was honored but formal, approached with reverence rather than warmth. But Thor was loved with a straightforward, uncomplicated love. He was the god people felt they knew, the god who seemed most like them in spirit, if not in power. He fought for them, he drank with them, he laughed at honest jokes, and enjoyed simple pleasures. He was mighty, yes, but he was also approachable, reachable, present. Parents invoked his name when tucking children into bed, asking him to guard their little ones through the night. Farmers called on him when planting crops, requesting his blessing for good weather. Warriors spoke his name before battle, seeking his courage and strength. And in all these invocations, there was love, genuine affection for the red-bearded god who had never failed them. Thor felt this love, and carried it with him like armor. It was more protective than any metal, more valuable than any treasure. It reminded him why he fought, why he endured, why he continued despite the endless nature of his task. The love of those he protected was the greatest reward he could imagine. The years continued their march. Thor's beard grew longer, his muscles grew harder from constant use, his hammer grew more familiar in his hand. He had fought in more battles than could be counted, traveled more miles than could be measured, saved more lives than could be remembered. And still he continued, tireless and determined. He walked across Midgard in all seasons and all weather. He knew the land intimately, every mountain and valley, every river and lake, every forest and plain. He knew where giants liked to hide, where trolls built their lairs, where monsters spawned in dark places. This knowledge made him a better protector, able to anticipate threats before they fully emerged. In spring, he watched farmers plowing their fields, turning the earth for new planting. He blessed their work with his presence, and crops grew strong under his protection. In summer, he watched children playing in village squares, running and laughing in the warm sunlight. Their joy filled him with purpose. In autumn, he watched the harvest being gathered, seeing the results of a year's hard work being stored for winter. In winter, he watched families huddled around fires, surviving the cold months with courage and hope. Each season brought its own challenges and its own beauty. Thor experienced them all, century after century, never growing bored or weary of the cycle. Life was precious because it was cyclical, because it renewed itself, because it continued despite all obstacles. Giants continued to plot against Asgard and Midgard, but their plots always failed. Some were stopped by Thor's direct intervention, his hammer falling upon them before their schemes could unfold. Others were prevented by the very fear of Thor, giants abandoning plans simply because they knew he would come for them if they acted. The threat of Thor was almost as effective as Thor himself, but some threats required actual confrontation. Giants were proud creatures, and pride often overcame caution. They would convince themselves that they could succeed where others had failed, that they were smarter or stronger or more clever than those who had come before. And then Thor would prove them wrong, as he had proven countless others wrong throughout the ages. One autumn, 3 giant brothers decided to attack a human settlement that had grown prosperous through trade. The settlement sat at a crossroads where merchants from many regions met to exchange goods. It was wealthy by human standards, with good houses and full storehouses. The giants saw this wealth and wanted to take it. They came at night, thinking darkness would hide them, but Thor needed no light to sense danger. He was in Asgard when he felt the threat, a disturbance in the order of things, a wrongness that called to him like a bell ringing. He harnessed his goats immediately and rode across the sky toward Midgard. He arrived as the giants were breaking through the settlement's walls. The humans were fighting back with spears and arrows, but their weapons barely scratched the giants' thick skin. Buildings were burning, people were screaming. Chaos was spreading through the street. Thor descended from the sky like a bolt of lightning made solid. His chariot landed between the giants and the fleeing humans with a crash that shook the ground. Thunder rolled across the night, and lightning illuminated the scene in stark flashes of white light. The giants saw Thor and hesitated, but they had already begun their attack. Retreat now would be shameful, so they chose to fight, 3 against 1, confident in their numbers. Thor did not speak. There was nothing to say. He simply raised Mjolnir and went to work. The first giant fell quickly, struck in the chest before he could raise his club. The blow sent him flying backward into the forest beyond the settlement, where he crashed through trees like they were grass stems. The second giant managed to swing his weapon, but Thor ducked under it and struck upward, the hammer catching the giant under his chin. The giant's head snapped back, and he collapsed like a felled tree. The third giant tried to run, his courage failing at the sight of his brother's defeat. But Thor's hammer flew from his hand, spinning through the air, and struck the fleeing giant between his shoulder blades. The giant fell, and the hammer returned to Thor's hand in an instant. The battle was over in a moment. 3 giants had come to destroy the settlement, and 3 giants lay defeated. Thor checked each one to ensure they were truly finished, then turned to the settlement. Fires still burned, and people were injured, but the threat was ended. Thor helped put out the fires, his strength making quick work of collapsed beams and fallen walls. He helped dig people out of rubble, his sensitive hearing locating those trapped beneath debris. He worked through the night alongside the humans, rebuilding what the giants had destroyed. By dawn, the settlement was secure. The dead were laid out with respect, the injured were being tended by healers, and repairs were already underway. The people gathered around Thor to thank him, but he simply nodded and returned to his chariot. He needed no thanks. This was his work, his purpose, his choice. As he rode back toward Asgard, the sun rising behind him, Thor thought about the night's battle. It had been quick and decisive, as most of his battles were. The giants had been strong, but they had not been mighty. Might required more than strength. It required purpose, commitment, the will to use power in service of something beyond oneself. Thor had these things. The giants did not. That was why Thor won, again and again, battle after battle, century after century. He returned to Asgard and reported to Odin, as was proper. The Allfather listened to the account, nodded, and thanked his son for his vigilance. Then Thor went to his hall, where Sif waited with food and drink. He ate, he rested, and then he prepared himself for whatever would come next. The rhythm of Thor's life was as steady as the beating of a drum. Battle, rest, preparation, battle again. Journey, return, wait, journey again. Threat, detected. Threat, ended. New, threat, detected. It could have been monotonous, but Thor never experienced it that way. Each battle was unique. Each threat was different. Each act of protection mattered to those it saved. Winter came again, deep and cold. Snow covered Midgard in a blanket of white that softened the edges of the world. The humans retreated to their homes, conserving food and warmth, telling stories around their fires to pass the long dark night. Many of these stories were about Thor, about his great deeds and mighty battles, about the times he had saved them from danger. Thor heard these stories sometimes, when he walked among humans in disguise. He would sit by a fire and listen to someone tell a tale about him, often getting the details wrong or adding embellishments that had never happened. He never corrected them. The stories served their purpose regardless of perfect accuracy. They gave people hope, comfort, and a sense that someone powerful cared about their welfare. One night, sitting in a small farmhouse listening to a grandfather tell his grandchildren about the time Thor had fought a dragon. Something Thor had actually never done. He realized something. The stories were not really about him. They were about the humans themselves, about their need to believe in protection, about their determination to survive in a hard world, about their courage in the face of dangers they could not overcome alone. Thor was simply the symbol they had chosen to represent these ideals. He happened to be real, and he happened to actually protect them. But even if he did not exist, they would have invented someone like him. Humans needed to believe that strength could be used for good, that power could serve the weak, that the mighty could be kind. This realization filled Thor with a quiet joy. He was not just protecting humans from external threat. He was embodying an ideal, living proof that power and protection could go hand in hand. His existence itself was a comfort to them, independent of any specific act of rescue. He left the farmhouse quietly, slipping away into the night without revealing who he had been. The grandfather continued his story. The children listened with wide eyes, and the fire crackled warmly. Thor walked through the snow toward another village, another settlement, another place where he might be needed. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliant in the black sky. The snow crunched beneath Thor's boots, the only sound in the winter silent. He could see his breath in the air, white clouds that dissipated quickly. The world felt clean and pure under its covering of snow, all the hard edges hidden, all the rough places smooth. Thor loved winter. It was honest and straightforward, like him. There was no pretense in winter. It was cold, and you dealt with it. It was harsh, and you endured it. It tested you, and you either proved yourself or you did not. He respected that clarity. He walked for hours, crossing frozen rivers and climbing snowy hills. He passed through silent forests, where trees stood like white pillars holding up the sky. He saw tracks of animals in the snow, deer and rabbits, foxes and wolves, each creature surviving in its own way. Life persisted even in the hardest season, adapting and enduring. As dawn approached, Thor reached a small village nestled in a valley between hills. Smoke rose from chimneys, grey against the lightening sky. People would be waking soon, starting their daily routines, facing another day of winter. They would feed their animals, check their stores, repair their tools, tell their stories, live their lives. And Thor would watch over them, as he always had, as he always would. This was his purpose, his joy, his eternal work. The Thunder God, the giant killer, the protector of Midgard, standing guard while humans slept, ready to face whatever threats might come. The sun rose slowly, turning the snow pink and gold. A new day began, full of possibility and danger, challenge and reward. And Thor stood ready to meet it, hammer in hand, courage in heart, determination in soul. This was his story, repeated endlessly through time. Not one great battle, but countless small ones. Not one heroic act, but an endless series of protections. Not a tale with a clear beginning and end, but a continuous narrative that flowed like a river, always moving, always present, always necessary. And so the story continues, as long as there are threats to face and people to protect, as long as thunder rolls and lightning flashes, as long as the hammer Mjolnir strikes true, and the red-bearded god stands firm. Thor's tale is eternal, like the turning of seasons, like the rising of the sun, like the love of those who need protecting for those who provide protection. It winds through Norse mythology, like a golden thread, binding together gods and humans, heaven and earth, power and purpose. The thunder god watches still, patient and ready, mighty and kind, simple and profound. And Midgard sleeps safely under his protection, dreaming peaceful dreams, knowing that someone stands guard, knowing that they are not alone, knowing that when thunder rolls across the sky, it is the sound of Thor keeping his eternal promise to protect, to defend, to stand firm against all threat, to be the hammer that strikes down evil, the storm that washes away danger, the constant presence that never fails. This is Thor. This is his gift. This is his eternal journey through the 9 realms, never ending, always continuing, forever vigilant. And the story goes on, as it has for countless ages, as it will for countless more, until the final battle at the end of all things. But that is a tale for another time. For now, there is only the endless work of protection, the eternal duty of the guardian, the ceaseless vigilance of the thunder god. Thor walks through Midgard still, watching over those who cannot watch over themselves, fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves, standing firm while others rest in peace. The hammer strikes, the giants fall, the humans endure, and life continues its precious cycle under the watchful eye of the red-bearded god, who never stops, never rests, never fails in his sacred duty. This is the way of Thor, simple and eternal, powerful and gentle, fierce and kind. The protector, the defender, the guardian who walks between worlds, keeping chaos at bay, maintaining order, ensuring that life can flourish in the space his strength provides. And so the tale concludes for now. Though the work never ends, though the vigilance never wavers, though the protection never ceases. Thor continues his eternal journey, hammer ready, courage strong, purpose clear, watching over Midgard as the night sky watches over the earth, constant and eternal, forever and always, until the end of time itself. Sleep well under Thor's protection, for he stands guard while you dream, and no harm will reach you, while the thunder god keeps watch. The storm clouds gather at his call, the lightning dances at his command, and the thunder rolls across the heavens as proof that he is near, ready and waiting, mighty and true, the eternal guardian of Midgard, and all who dwell therein. This is his story. This is his purpose. This is his eternal gift to the 9 realms. The tale of Thor, god of thunder, protector of humanity, wielder of Mjolnir. son of Odin and Jord, husband of Sif, father of Magni and Modi and Thrud, the mightiest of the Aesir, the defender of Asgard, the hammer of the gods, the giant killer, the stormbringer, the eternal guardian. His legend echoes through time like thunder rolling across distant mountains, powerful and present, near and far, always there when needed, constant as the northern star, reliable as the dawn, eternal as the sky itself. Rest now in the knowledge that Thor watches over you, that his strength protects you, that his hammer stands ready to defend you from all harm. Let sleep come gently, let dreams flow peacefully, let rest restore your strength, knowing that the Thunder God stands guard through the endless night. This is his promise, this is his gift, this is his eternal watch. The story of Thor continues forever, a tale without end, a protection without limit, a guardian without equal. Sleep safely under his care, dream peacefully under his watch, rest deeply under his protection. The Thunder God keeps his vigil, now and always, forever and eternal, until the end of all days and beyond. This is Thor's way, this is his choice, this is his everlasting devotion to those he has sworn to protect. And so the story comes full circle, ending where it begins, with Thor standing watch over Midgard, hammer ready, courage strong, purpose clear, eternal and unchanging. The guardian who never sleeps so that others may rest in peace. The tale is told, the words are spoken, the legend is complete. Sleep now, knowing you are protected, knowing you are safe, knowing that Thor watches over all who need his strength. This is the end of this telling, though the story itself never ends. Thor's journey continues beyond these words, beyond this moment, beyond all telling. His watch is eternal, his protection is endless, his devotion is complete. Rest well, sleep deeply, dream peacefully. The Thunder God stands guard, and all is well in the realms he protects. This is his promise, this is his truth, this is his eternal way. The story of Thor, told in simple words for peaceful sleep, comes to its gentle close. May you rest as safely as those under Thor's protection, as peacefully as the world when the giants are defeated, as deeply as the calm after the storm has passed. Sleep now. The guardian watches. All is well. But the story of Thor stretches further still, for his journey spans ages beyond counting, and his deeds fill more pages than any single book could hold. Let us continue walking with the Thunder God through the endless cycles of time, watching as he fulfills his sacred duty again and again, never wavering, never failing, always present when needed most. The winters came and went like waves upon a shore, each one unique, yet familiar. Thor experienced them all, walking through snow and ice, feeling the bite of cold wind on his face, watching how humans adapted and survived. He marveled at their resilience, their ability to endure hardship with grace and determination. They were fragile compared to gods, their lives brief as mayfly dances, yet they possessed a strength that Thor deeply respected. In one particularly harsh winter, when food grew scarce and wolves came down from the mountains seeking prey, Thor spent weeks walking among the villages of Midgard. He did not reveal himself as a god, but appeared as a wandering stranger, large and red-bearded, traveling from place to place. At each settlement, he helped in small ways. He split wood for families running low on fuel. He hunted game in the deep forests where humans feared to go. He reinforced walls against the wind and cold. The people welcomed him, as they welcomed all travelers in winter, for hospitality was sacred in those hard months. They shared their meager food with him, though he needed no sustenance. They offered him warm places by their fires, though cold could not harm him. They treated him with kindness, and he returned that kindness tenfold, though they never knew who walked among them. One night, in a small village that had only a dozen families, an old woman sat beside Thor at the communal fire. She looked at him with eyes that had seen many winters, eyes that held wisdom earned through long experience. She did not know he was Thor, but she sensed something about him, some quality that set him apart. She told him a story as they sat together, a tale passed down through her family for generations. It was about a time when giants had come to this very village, long ago, seeking to destroy it and take the people as slaves. The villagers had prayed to Thor, not expecting an answer, for they were nobody important, just simple farmers living in a forgotten valley. But Thor had come anyway. He had appeared in the midst of the giant attack, his hammer falling like justice from the sky. The battle had been swift and terrible, and when it ended, the giants lay defeated and the village stood safe. Thor had stayed long enough to ensure everyone was unharmed, then had departed without waiting for thanks or worship. The old woman finished her story and looked at Thor with those wise eyes. She said something then that Thor would remember forever. She said that the greatest strength was not in destroying enemies, but in protecting friends. She said that true power showed itself not in conquest but in care. She said that the mightiest warrior was the one who fought for others rather than for glory. Thor said nothing, but his heart swelled with quiet pride. This old woman understood what he had always believed, but rarely put into words. His strength was great, but it meant nothing without purpose. His hammer was mighty, but it was just metal without the will to use it rightly. His power was tremendous, but it was wasted unless directed toward protection. When morning came, Thor left the village before anyone else woke. He had other places to visit, other people to check on, other threats to watch for, but he carried the old woman's words with him, a gift more valuable than gold, a reminder of why his endless work mattered. The seasons continued their eternal dance. Spring melted the snow, and green shoots pushed up through the earth. Summer brought warmth and growth, fields ripening under the sun. Autumn painted the world in red and gold, harvest filling storehouses for the winter to come. And winter returned again, completing the cycle, preparing the way for another spring. Through all these seasons, Thor maintained his watch. He learned the patterns of the world, the rhythms that governed life in Midgard. He knew when storms would come, and when the weather would be fair. He knew when herds would migrate, and when fish would run. He knew the movements of the world, as a sailor knows the sea, intimately and instinctively. This knowledge served him well. He could anticipate where giants might attack, predicting their movements based on seasons and opportunity. He could sense when trolls were breeding in their mountain caves, preparing new generations of threats. He could feel disturbances in the natural order, warnings that something dangerous was stirring in dark places. One spring morning, Thor felt such a disturbance. It came from the far north, beyond the settled lands of Midgard, in the wild places where ice never fully melted. Something was wrong there. Something was moving that should not move. Something was waking that should remain asleep. He harnessed his goats and rode north across the sky. The land below changed as he traveled. Green fields giving way to rocky ground, trees becoming sparse and twisted, finally disappearing altogether as he entered the realm of permanent ice. Here the air was thin and cold, the wind constant and cutting. Nothing grew in this place. Nothing lived here by choice. Thor descended to the frozen ground and walked forward, his boots crunching on ice that had lain undisturbed for centuries. He could feel the wrongness more strongly now, a presence ahead that radiated cold malice and ancient hunger. He gripped Mjolnir tightly and continued forward, ready for whatever he might find. What he found was a glacier that had begun to move. But this was no natural movement, no seasonal shift of ice and snow. The glacier was alive, or something within it was alive, and it was slowly advancing toward Midgard, grinding everything in its path to dust. Thor approached cautiously, examining the ice. He could see shapes within it, frozen forms that might have been giants or might have been something older and worse. They had been trapped here since ancient times, sealed in ice by some power Thor did not understand. But now the ice was weakening, melting from within, and the things inside were beginning to stir. He knew what he had to do. If these beings escaped, they would bring destruction to Midgard on a scale beyond anything Thor had faced before. They had to remain sealed, locked in their frozen prison until the end of time. Thor raised Mjolnir and struck the glacier, not to break it, but to reshape it, to reinforce the ice with his power. Lightning flowed from the hammer into the frozen mass, carrying Thor's will, his strength, his determination. The ice responded, growing thicker, growing stronger. The cracks sealing, the weakness mending. He worked for hours, striking the glacier again and again. each blow sending power deep into the ice. The shapes within stopped moving, frozen once more in unbreakable cold. The glacier ceased its advance, locked in place by Thor's power. The threat was contained. When Thor finally stopped, sweat covered his face despite the freezing temperature. He had poured tremendous energy into the task, but it was necessary. Midgard was safe again, protected from a danger that most humans would never know existed. That was often the way of things. Thor prevented catastrophes that no one knew were coming, ended threats before they could fully emerge. He flew back toward Asgard as the sun set, painting the ice fields in shades of pink and purple. Another day's work was done, another threat neutralized, another chapter in his endless story of protection written in ice and lightning. Years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new battles. Thor fought frost giants in winter and fire giants in summer. He battled sea monsters in spring and sky serpents in autumn. He protected caravans crossing dangerous lands, ships sailing in treacherous waters, settlements built in vulnerable places. He did this work without complaint, without resentment, without counting the cost. It was simply what he did, who he was, the purpose that defined his existence. Some might have grown tired of such endless labor, but Thor never did. Each battle was important. Each act of protection mattered. Each life saved was worth the effort. There were times when Thor worked alongside other gods. Tyr sometimes joined him when threats required both strength and strategy. Freya occasionally helped when magic was needed in addition to might. Even Loki, unpredictable and troublesome as he was, sometimes proved useful in situations that required cunning or deception. But most often, Thor worked alone. He preferred it that way. Alone, he could move quickly, make decisions instantly, act without needing to coordinate with others. His style of protection was direct and immediate, and company often slowed him down. One summer evening, Thor stood on a cliff overlooking the sea. The sun was setting over the water, turning it gold and red. Waves crashed against the rocks below, their rhythm eternal and soothing. Thor watched the horizon, where sky met sea in a perfect line, and thought about time. He had lived so long that his early memories felt like someone else's life. He had fought so many battles that individual encounters blurred together. He had traveled so far that he could no longer remember every place he had been. Time wore away at memories, like water wore away at stone. Slowly, but inevitably. But some things remained clear. The faces of those he had saved, the gratitude in their eyes, the relief and joy when danger passed. The feeling of Mjolnir in his hand, perfectly balanced, an extension of his will. The knowledge that his work mattered, that he made a difference, that Midgard was better because he existed. These things were permanent, eternal, immune to the erosion of time. They defined who Thor was and why he continued his endless work. They were his foundation, the bedrock upon which everything else rested. As darkness fell, stars emerged in the sky above. Thor recognized them all, had navigated by them countless times, knew their patterns and movement. The world changed constantly, but the stars remained fixed, reliable guides through the darkness. He liked to think he was like the stars for the people of Midgard, a constant presence they could rely on, unchanging and dependable. He turned from the sea and walked inland, following paths only he could sense, guided by instinct and experience toward places where he might be needed. The night was deep and quiet, but Thor walked on, tireless as the stars above, patient as the mountains around him, eternal as the sea behind him. In a distant village, a child woke from a nightmare, crying out in fear. The mother comforted her daughter, whispering that Thor watched over them, that no harm would come while the thunder god stood guard. The child calmed, reassured, and drifted back to sleep. Neither mother nor daughter knew that Thor stood just beyond their village at that moment, checking the area for threats, ensuring their safety. This was the reality of Thor's protection. It was not always dramatic battles against massive enemies. Sometimes it was simply presence, simply being there, simply ensuring that families could sleep peacefully without fear. This quiet guardianship mattered as much as any legendary battle, maybe more, for it touched every life in Midgard, every night, without fail. Thor continued through the darkness, visiting village after village, checking on the people under his protection. He saw farmers sleeping after long days of work. He saw children dreaming innocent dreams. He saw elderly people resting peacefully in their final years. He saw all the small, precious moments that made up human existence, and he vowed once again to protect them all. As dawn approached, Thor found himself on a hilltop, watching the sun rise over Midgard. The light spread slowly across the land, revealing forests and fields, rivers and roads. The countless places where humans lived, their brief, beautiful lives. It was a sight he had seen thousands of times, but it never grew old, never lost its power to move him. This was what he fought for. Not abstract ideals or distant goals, but this specific world, these particular people, these real lives being lived with courage and hope. Every threat he ended, every giant he defeated, every monster he destroyed, it all served this simple purpose, allowing the sun to rise on a peaceful world where humans could live without fear. The sun climbed higher, warming the land, and Thor smiled. It was a good day to be alive, a good day to be a protector, a good day to continue his eternal work. He raised Mjolnir to the morning sky, and thunder rolled across the heavens, a greeting to the new day, a promise that the Guardian was awake and watching. In the months that followed, Thor faced challenges both familiar and strange. Giants continued their eternal enmity toward gods and humans, requiring constant vigilance. But new threats also emerged, creatures and dangers that Thor had never encountered before. There was the thing that crawled up from deep beneath the earth, a creature older than the gods themselves, something that had slept since the world's beginning. It emerged in a remote valley, causing the ground to shake and split, threatening to destroy everything nearby. Thor fought it for 3 days and 3 nights, a battle that shook mountains and diverted rivers. In the end, Thor drove it back into the earth and sealed the crack through which it had emerged, ensuring it could not return. There was the sickness that spread through a region of Midgard, affecting both humans and animals, causing weakness and death. Thor could not fight disease with his hammer, but he could seek the source. He tracked it to a spring that had been poisoned by a malicious spirit. He confronted the spirit and destroyed it, then purified the spring with his power. The sickness ended, and the region recovered. There was the false prophet who claimed to speak for the gods, who led people astray with lies and demanded terrible sacrifices. Thor appeared to this false prophet in his full divine glory, thunder and lightning surrounding him, and commanded the man to cease his deception. The false prophet fell to his knees, his lies exposed, his power broken. Thor did not harm him but sent him away with a warning, giving him a chance to redeem himself. Each challenge was different, requiring different approaches, different solutions. Thor adapted to each one, using strength when strength was needed, wisdom when wisdom was required, mercy when mercy was appropriate. He was not a simple warrior who knew only how to fight. He was a protector who understood that protection took many forms. One autumn, Thor received word of a threat unlike any he had faced before. A group of humans, driven by desperation and misguided by false promises, had decided to raid other settlements, taking food and supplies by force. They were not evil giants or mindless monsters, but humans, his people, turned against each other by hunger and fear. Thor could not simply destroy them, as he would destroy giants. They were the very people he was sworn to protect, yet he also could not allow them to harm other innocent humans. This was a problem that required careful handling. He appeared to the raiders not as a god, but as a man, large and red-bearded, traveling alone. He asked to join them, claiming he was also desperate and hungry. They accepted him, seeing his size and strength as valuable for their raid. Thor traveled with them for days, listening to their stories, understanding their situations. Many had lost their farms to drought. Others had suffered from giant attacks that destroyed their livelihood. They were not wicked people, but desperate ones, pushed to desperate actions by circumstances beyond their control. When they prepared to attack their first target, Thor revealed himself. He stood before them in his true form, hammer in hand, divine power radiating from him. But he did not threaten them with destruction. Instead, he offered them a choice. He would help them, he said. He would ensure they had food and supplies to survive the coming winter. But they must abandon their plans to raid innocent people. They must return to being the good people Thor knew they could be. They must trust him to provide for them rather than taking from others. The raiders, faced with the god himself, agreed immediately. Thor kept his promise. He used his knowledge of the land to guide them to places where game was plentiful. He led them to valleys where wild grain grew thick. He showed them caves where supplies could be stored safely. He even convinced prosperous settlements to share with them, using his influence to broker peace between desperate people and fearful communities. By the time winter arrived, the former raiders were settled and supplied, no longer desperate, no longer a threat. They had been saved not by Thor's hammer, but by his compassion and his willingness to see them as people rather than problems to be solved with violence. This incident reminded Thor that protection sometimes meant preventing conflicts before they began, addressing root causes rather than just fighting symptoms. It was a lesson he carried forward, looking more carefully at why threats emerged, not just how to end them. The winter that followed was long but peaceful. Thor checked on the former raiders regularly, ensuring they had what they needed, making sure they kept their promise to live peacefully. They did, and they prospered, and they became some of the most loyal worshippers of Thor, telling stories about how the thunder god had saved them not with violence but with mercy. Spring came again, as it always did, bringing new life to the world. Thor watched with satisfaction as the former raiders planted crops, built new homes, raised their children in peace. This was victory of a different kind, quieter than defeating giants, but just as important, maybe more so. The years continued their endless march. Thor's legend grew with each passing season, each new story, each act of protection. Bards sang songs about him in every hall and gathering place. Poets composed verses, celebrating his deeds. Artists carved his image in wood and stone, capturing his strength and courage in permanent form. But Thor himself remained unchanged by fame. He was not interested in glory or recognition. He did not measure his worth by how many songs were sung about him. He measured it by how many people slept safely each night, how many families lived without fear, how many children grew up in peace. This was the true Thor, beneath the legends and stories, beyond the fame and worship. A protector who did his work because it needed doing, who stood guard because someone had to, who fought endlessly because the alternative was unacceptable. He walked through Midgard year after year, always watching, always ready, always present. He knew the faces of countless humans, remembered their names, recalled their troubles and triumph. He was not a distant god ruling from afar, but a constant presence woven into the fabric of daily life. Farmers saw him walking through their fields, checking the crops, ensuring no blight or pestilence threatened the harvest. Sailors spotted him on distant shores, watching the sea, ready to aid any ship in distress. Hunters encountered him in deep forests, where he kept the balance between predator and prey, ensuring no creature grew too numerous or too scarce. He was everywhere and nowhere, present when needed, invisible when not required. This was the nature of his guardianship, always there but rarely intrusive, protecting without demanding attention or gratitude. Time flowed on, and Thor flowed with it, constant as a river, patient as a mountain, eternal as the sky. His story continued, chapter after chapter, battle after battle, act of protection after act of protection. There was no end in sight, no conclusion to this tale, only the eternal continuation of his sacred duty. In the quiet moments between battles, Thor sometimes thought about meaning and purpose. He wondered if his endless work truly made a difference, if Midgard was genuinely better for his efforts, if his protection mattered in the grand scheme of things. But then he would remember a specific child whose life he had saved, a particular family that continued to exist because he had stopped a giant attack, an individual person who smiled and laughed, and loved because Thor had been there when it mattered most. And he knew the answer. Yes, it mattered. Every single act mattered. Every life saved was worth the effort. This knowledge sustained him through the endless years, giving him strength when strength was needed, courage when courage was required, determination when determination was essential. He was Thor, protector of Midgard, wielder of Mjolnir, guardian of humanity, and he would continue his work until time itself ended. The thunder rolled across the sky, announcing his presence, declaring his promise, proclaiming his eternal commitment. As long as Thor stood watch, Midgard would be protected. As long as his hammer could strike, threats would be defeated. As long as his strength endured, the innocent would be safe. This was his oath, spoken not in words, but in actions, proven not with promises, but with presence. The thunder god kept his vigil, now and forever, eternal and unchanging. The guardian who never failed, the protector who never wavered, the defender who never surrendered. And so the story continues, as it has for ages beyond counting, as it will for ages yet to come. Thor walks through Midgard still, hammer ready, courage strong, purpose clear. The giants plot their plots, the monsters lurk in dark places, the chaos presses against the borders of order, but Thor stands firm, and while he stands, all is well in the realm of human. Sleep peacefully, for the guardian watches. Dream safely, for the protector stands ready. Rest deeply, for Thor keeps his eternal vigil. Now and always, forever and beyond, until the very end of time, and even past that final moment, into whatever comes after, constant and true, the thunder god who never stops, never abandons those under his care. This is Thor's promise. This is his gift. This is his eternal dedication to the people and world he has sworn to protect. The story winds on, through time like a river, through mountains, steady and eternal, powerful and gentle, fierce and kind, exactly like Thor himself. The passage of seasons marked time in Midgard, like the turning of pages in an endless book. Each season brought its own beauty and its own challenges, and Thor witnessed them all with patient eyes that had seen centuries pass like days. Summer arrived with warmth that soaked into the earth, awakening everything that had slept through winter's cold embrace. Fields turned green with growing crop, trees filled with leaves that rustled in gentle breezes. Flowers bloomed in wild profusion, painting meadows in every color imaginable. The days stretched long, and the sun climbed high in the sky, blessing the land with light and warmth. Thor loved summer in Midgard. He walked through the warm fields, feeling the sun on his face, watching farmers tend their crops with careful attention. Children played in villages and towns, their laughter carrying on the wind like music. People gathered in the evenings to share food and stories, celebrating the abundance of the growing season. But summer also brought its own dangers. Droughts could shrivel crops and dry up wells. Wildfires could sweep across grasslands, consuming everything in their path. Riders from distant lands sometimes came in summer, when travel was easy and targets were visible. Thor watched for these threats, ready to respond when needed. One particularly hot summer, a drought settled over a large region of Midgard. Week after week passed without rain. The ground cracked and dried. Crops wilted in the fields. Wells ran low, then dry. People prayed for rain, but the sky remained cloudless and merciless. Thor heard their prayers and investigated. He discovered that a group of fire giants had settled in mountains to the east, their presence driving away the rain clouds that normally watered the region. The giants were not directly attacking anyone, but their mere presence was causing catastrophe through the disruption of natural patterns. Thor confronted the fire giants in their mountain lair. They were vast beings made of flame and smoke, creatures of pure heat who turned stone molten with their touch. There were 7 of them, and they had no intention of leaving simply because Thor asked them to. The battle that followed was unlike any Thor had fought before. He could not simply strike the fire giants with his hammer, for they had no solid form to strike. They were living flames, shifting and changing, impossible to pin down. When Mjolnir passed through them, they simply reformed, laughing at Thor's attempt. Thor realized he needed a different approach. He could not defeat the fire giants through strength alone. He needed to use the environment against them. He led the giants away from their mountain lair, taunting them, challenging their pride, making them chase him across the landscape. He led them to a deep canyon where an underground river flowed through caves and tunnels. He descended into the canyon, and the fire giants followed, their arrogance making them careless. When they entered the narrow spaces of the canyon, Thor struck the canyon walls with Mjolnir, shattering the stone, releasing the underground river in a massive flood. Water and fire met in an explosion of steam and fury. The fire giants screamed as the water quenched their flames, reducing them to cooling embers. Thor had used their own nature against them, using water to defeat beings made of fire. The battle was won not through pure strength, but through cleverness and understanding. With the fire giants gone, rain clouds returned to the region. Within days, gentle rains fell, soaking into the grateful earth. Crops revived, wells refilled, and the drought ended. The people celebrated, not knowing the true cause of their salvation, not realizing that Thor had fought and won a battle in the darkness beneath the mountains, just for them. This was often how Thor's protection worked. People saw the results, rain returning, danger passing, peace continuing, but they did not see the battles fought in hidden places. The threats ended before they could fully emerge, the Guardian working tirelessly in the shadows to maintain the light. Thor did not mind the lack of recognition. In fact, he preferred it. When people knew he had helped them, they often tried to thank him excessively, to worship him with offerings and ceremonies. But Thor did not want worship. He wanted people to live their lives freely, without feeling indebted to him, without spending their precious time and resources on gratitude. His reward was their safety, their happiness, their ability to live without fear. That was payment enough, more valuable than any treasure, more meaningful than any ceremony. As summer faded into autumn, the world transformed again. Leaves turned brilliant shades of red, orange, and yellow. The air grew crisp and cool, carrying the scent of ripening fruit and drying grass. Farmers harvested their crops, gathering the results of a year's hard work, filling their storehouses for the winter ahead. Thor walked through Midgard during harvest season, watching the activity with satisfaction. This was the reward for all his protection, all his battles, all his endless vigilance. These people could harvest their crops in peace because Thor had kept the giants away, had defeated the monsters, had maintained order against chaos. He sometimes helped with the harvest, appearing as a traveling worker, lending his tremendous strength to the task. He could lift loads that would require 3 men to carry. He could thresh grain faster than any normal human. He could work from dawn to dusk without tiring. The farmers appreciated the help, never knowing they worked alongside a god. These moments of simple labor brought Thor great joy. There was something deeply satisfying about honest work, about using strength for constructive purposes rather than destructive ones. Swinging a scythe to cut grain was different from swinging Mjolnir to strike giants, but both had their place. Both were valuable. In the evenings during harvest season, Thor would join the workers around their fires, eating simple food, drinking mild ale, listening to their conversation. They talked about the weather, about their families, about their hopes for the winter ahead. They worried about small things, whether they had stored enough food, whether their roofs would withstand the winter storms, whether their children would stay healthy in the cold months ahead. Thor listened to these worries with great attention. To these people, these concerns were everything. They were not thinking about cosmic battles between gods and giants, about the fate of the 9 realms, about legendary quests and epic struggles. They were thinking about survival, about family, about making it through another winter. And Thor understood that these small worries were as important as any grand conflict, maybe more so. He helped where he could, in small ways that would not reveal his identity. He mentioned caves, where firewood could be gathered easily. He pointed out valleys where game was plentiful. He shared tips for preserving food that he had learned over centuries of watching humans survive. These small helps mattered, adding up to make the difference between hardship and sufficiency for many families. As autumn deepened and winter approached, Thor noticed patterns in the world around him. He saw birds flying south in great flocks, seeking warmer land. He saw animals growing thick winter coats, preparing for cold months ahead. He saw how the very light changed, becoming softer and more golden as the days grew shorter. The world was preparing for winter, and so were the people of Midgard. Thor prepared as well, though his preparations were different. He knew that winter brought giants down from their frozen strongholds, tempted by the vulnerability of humans huddled in their home. He knew that winter made travel dangerous, meaning he might need to reach people in distress more quickly. He knew that winter was when his protection was needed most. He spent the final days of autumn strengthening his connection to Midgard, visiting every region, checking every settlement, making sure he knew where everyone was and what resources they had. It was like a shepherd counting his flock before a storm, ensuring none were lost or forgotten. One late autumn day, Thor stood on a high mountain peak, looking out across the vast expanse of Midgard. From this height, he could see great distances, could observe the entire rhythm of the land preparing for winter. Smoke rose from countless chimneys as people banked their fires against the coming cold. Animals moved through the forests below, searching for final meals before deep winter made hunting difficult. The view reminded Thor of his responsibility scope. Every fire burning below represented a family depending on his protection. Every settlement was a trust he had accepted. Every single life in Midgard fell under his care. It was an enormous responsibility, one that would crush most beings under its weight. But Thor had never felt burdened by it. He had chosen this path freely, had accepted this duty willingly, and he would maintain it faithfully. The weight was real, but Thor's strength was equal to it. He was built for this work, created for this purpose, defined by this mission. He raised Mjolnir toward the sky, and thunder answered him, rolling across the heavens like a promise being spoken. Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating clouds that were forming on the northern horizon. The first winter storm was coming, and Thor was ready to face it, ready to guide his people through it, ready to stand between them and any danger the cold months might bring. Winter arrived with a fierce storm that buried the land in deep snow. Wind howled like wolves, and temperatures dropped until the very air seemed to freeze. People retreated to their homes, banking their fires high, wrapping themselves in every warm thing they owned, waiting for the storm to pass. Thor walked through the storm untouched by the cold. He checked on isolated farmhouses, ensuring no one was trapped or in danger. He found a family whose roof had collapsed under the weight of snow, and helped them dig out and repair the damage. He discovered a hunter who had become lost in the whiteout conditions, and guided him back to safety. He spent 3 days moving through the storm, finding those who needed help, providing aid where it was required. When the storm finally passed, the world was transformed into a landscape of white and silver. Snow lay thick over everything, sculpted by the wind into drifts and curves that changed the familiar land into something strange and beautiful. The sun emerged, reflecting off the snow with blinding intensity, turning the world into a realm of pure light. Thor stood in this transformed landscape and smiled. Winter was hard, but it was also beautiful in its own way. It tested people, yes, but it also brought them together. Families gathered close around fires, telling stories, sharing food, supporting each other through the difficult season. Communities helped each other, sharing resources, looking out for the vulnerable, proving that humans were strong not just individually, but collectively. This strength impressed Thor deeply. He was mighty as an individual, capable of facing any threat alone. But he recognized that there was power in community, in people working together, in the bonds of family and friendship that held humans together through hardship. It was a different kind of strength than his, but no less valuable. The winter continued, storm after storm, each one bringing new challenges. Thor faced them all, protecting those who needed protection, rescuing those who needed rescue, maintaining order against the chaos of winter's fury. He did not sleep, did not rest, did not pause in his endless work. The winter months were too dangerous, too filled with potential threats, to allow any relaxation of vigilance. But he did not work entirely alone during this harsh winter. Sometimes other gods joined him in his efforts. Freya sent visions to healers, guiding them in treating winter sicknesses. Tyr inspired leaders to make wise decisions about rationing food and resources. Even Odin, in his mysterious way, seemed to be watching over certain people, guiding them through dreams and omens. Yet Thor remained the primary guardian, the constant presence, the one who was always there when danger struck. The other gods helped in their ways, but Thor was the foundation, the bedrock of protection that everything else rested upon. One particularly cold night, deep in the heart of winter, Thor stood in a forest clearing watching the stars wheel overhead. The night was clear, and bitterly cold, cold enough that even trees cracked with frost. His breath steamed in the air, and ice crystals formed on his beard. But Thor felt no discomfort. He was part of the storm, part of the winter, part of the eternal cycle of the seasons. He thought about time and how it passed differently for gods than for humans. To Thor, this winter was one of hundreds he had experienced. But for the humans huddled in their homes, this might be one of only 60 or 70 winters they would ever see. Each season was precious to them, in a way it could never be to an immortal being. This realization deepened Thor's commitment. Because time was precious to humans, because their lives were brief, every moment he protected mattered even more. A life saved was not just saved for that moment, but for all the future moments that person would experience, all the joy they would know, all the love they would give and receive, all the contributions they would make to their communities and families. When Thor saved a child from danger, he was not just saving one life, but potentially generations of descendants that child might have. When he protected a farmer, he was ensuring that crops would be planted and harvested, feeding not just that farmer's family, but everyone who depended on that food. Every act of protection rippled outward through time and space, creating effects Thor could barely imagine. This knowledge humbled him. His work was even more important than he had realized. He was not just fighting battles in the present, but shaping the future, ensuring that human stories could continue, that the brief, bright flames of mortal lives could burn without being extinguished prematurely by preventable disasters. The stars continued their slow wheel across the sky, marking time with their ancient pattern. Thor watched them until dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. Then he turned and walked through the snow, following paths only he could sense, guided toward wherever he might be needed next. Winter began to loosen its grip as the year turned toward spring. The days grew imperceptibly longer. The worst storms passed, leaving behind more gentle snowfalls. Ice on rivers and lakes began to show signs of melting. The world prepared itself for rebirth, for the great renewal that spring would bring. Thor felt this change in his bones, sensed it in the air and earth around him. Spring was coming, and with it would come new life, new growth, new challenges, and new opportunities to protect. The cycle would continue, as it always had, as it always would. And Thor would continue with it, eternal as the seasons themselves. As the last snows melted and the first green shoots appeared, Thor reflected on the winter that was ending. It had been hard, as winters always were, but Midgard had survived. Families had made it through intact. Communities had endured. The balance had been maintained between chaos and order, between destruction and preservation. Thor had fulfilled his purpose once again. No great celebration marked this achievement. No ceremonies honored his success. But every family gathered around their fires, every child playing in the returning sunlight, every farmer preparing fields for spring planting. These were his reward, his payment, his evidence that his work mattered. He stood on a hillside watching the dawn of a spring day, seeing the world come back to life after winter's death. Birds were returning from the south, their songs filling the air with music. Animals emerged from dens in hibernation, blinking in the fresh sunlight. Water ran free in streams and rivers, no longer locked in ice. Everything was beginning again, reborn, renewed, refreshed. And Thor stood ready to protect it all through another cycle, another year, another turn of the eternal wheel. His hammer hung at his side, patient and ready. His strength was undiminished. His purpose was clear. The thunder god kept his watch, as he always had, as he always would, until time itself came to an end. The story continues forward, always moving, never stopping, like time itself. Thor walks through the ages, through the seasons, through the endless cycle of days and night. He is the constant in a changing world, the reliable presence when everything else shifts and transforms. He is the guardian, the protector, the defender who never fails. And so the tale winds on, through spring and summer, autumn and winter, year after year, century after century, age after age. Thor remains, unchanged in purpose though the world changes around him, faithful to his duty, though everything else proves temporary, constant as the stars above and the earth below. The people of Midgard live their lives, brief and bright, like candle flames in the darkness. They are born, they grow, they love, they work, they age, they pass away. But through all their generations, through all their stories and struggles, Thor is there, watching over them, keeping them safe, standing between them and the chaos that would consume them. This is his gift to humanity. This is his eternal promise. This is the meaning of the thunder that rolls across the sky and the lightning that illuminates the darkness. It is Thor's voice saying, "I am here, I am watching, you are protected, you are safe." Rest well in that knowledge. Sleep peacefully under that protection. Dream safely in that care. The guardian stands watch, and all is well in the realms under his care. The thunder rolls on through time, eternal and unchanging. The voice of the protector declaring his presence to all who would listen. And Thor walks through Midgard still, hammer in hand, courage in heart, purpose in soul, the eternal guardian who never wavers, never stops in his sacred work. This is Thor's story, told in gentle words for peaceful rest. His tale continues beyond these pages, beyond this telling, beyond all words and stories. It continues in the real world, in every act of protection, in every moment of courage, in every strong person who stands up for those weaker than themselves. Thor's legacy is not just in ancient myths, but in the living principle he represents. That strength should serve, that power should protect, that the mighty have responsibility to the vulnerable. This principle echoes through time, inspiring everyone who hears his story to be a little stronger, a little braver, a little more protective of others. The story reaches its natural rest, though it never truly ends, for Thor's work is never finished. As long as there are people who need protection, as long as there are threats to face and dangers to overcome, Thor will be there, hammer ready, standing firm against the darkness. Sleep now under his protection. Rest deeply in his care. Dream peacefully knowing the guardian watches. All is well, all is safe, all is protected by the eternal strength of Thor, god of thunder, protector of Midgard, defender of humanity, the one who never stops, never sleeps, never abandons those under his sacred care. The thunder fades to a gentle rumble, like a lullaby sung by the sky itself. The lightning softens to a warm glow, like a candle flame keeping watch through the night. And Thor stands guard still, patient and eternal, strong and kind, fierce and gentle. Everything a guardian should be, and more. This is the end of the telling, though not the end of the tale. Thor's story goes on, forever and always, eternal as the sky above, constant as the earth below, reliable as the dawn that follows every night. Rest in that certainty. Sleep in that peace. The guardian watches, and all is well in the realms under his eternal care and protection. Yet there are more tales to tell, more seasons to witness, more moments in Thor's endless journey through time. For his story is vast as the sky, deep as the ocean, and there are always more chapters to unfold in the endless book of his deed. The spring that followed that long winter was particularly beautiful. The snow melted away to reveal earth that seemed more fertile than ever, as if the hardship of winter had strengthened the soil itself. Seeds planted by hopeful farmers sprouted quickly, growing with unusual vigor. The world burst into bloom, flowers covering hillsides in carpets of color that stretched as far as eyes could see. Thor walked through this reborn land with quiet satisfaction. He had guided Midgard through another winter, and now spring's reward was evident everywhere he looked. Children played in meadows filled with flowers, their laughter carrying on warm breezes. Farmers worked in their fields with songs on their lips, optimistic about the growing season ahead. Even the animals seemed happier, as if they too sensed that something special had arrived with this particular spring. But as always, Thor's joy was tempered by vigilance. Spring brought its own dangers, different from winter's threats, but no less real. Rivers swollen with snowmelt could flood, destroying homes and drowning the unwary. Spring storms could be fierce and unpredictable, bringing lightning that could start fires or winds that could destroy buildings. And giants, rested from their winter slumber, often grew active and aggressive in spring, eager to cause trouble after months of cold isolation. Thor traveled widely during these spring months, checking on every corner of Midgard, ensuring that winter's survivors did not fall victim to spring's hazard. He visited mountain villages where avalanches might threaten, coastal settlements where storm surges could strike, river communities where flooding was always a risk. His presence, though often unseen, provided comfort and protection wherever he went. In one riverside town, Thor arrived just as the spring floods reached dangerous levels. The river, normally gentle and manageable, had swollen to 3 times its usual size, churning with brown water that carried entire trees downstream like twigs. The townspeople had built barriers, trying to hold back the rising water, but it was clear their efforts would not be enough. Thor did not reveal himself immediately, but appeared as a large traveler seeking shelter from the rain. The townspeople, despite their own crisis, welcomed him warmly, offering him space in their town hall, where many families had gathered to wait out the flood. This generosity, shown even in the face of potential disaster, moved Thor deep. When the river broke through the barriers in the night, threatening to sweep through the town itself, Thor acted. He walked out into the storm, and those watching saw him raise his hands toward the sky. Thunder rolled louder than the storm itself, and lightning illuminated the scene in brilliant flashes. The rain paused, held back by Thor's will, giving the flood time to recede slightly. Then Thor went to the riverbank and began moving stones, massive boulders that normally would require a dozen men and special tools to budge, stacking them to create a new, stronger barrier. He worked through the night, and by dawn, a wall of stone stood between the town and the river. The townspeople emerged to find their homes saved, and a massive red-bearded man standing beside a wall that seemed to have appeared by magic. They knew then who had helped them, and they tried to thank Thor, but he had already departed, moving on to the next place that might need him. This was Thor's way. He helped without seeking recognition, protected without demanding gratitude, moved on without waiting for praise. His satisfaction came from the work itself, from knowing he had made a difference, from seeing people safe and able to continue their lives. Spring ripened into early summer, and the world grew warm and green. Thor's journeys took him to places he had not visited in years, remote corners of Midgard where people lived simple lives, far from the larger settlements and trading centers. These isolated communities were especially vulnerable, having no one to call on for help except the gods themselves, and Thor made sure to check on them regularly. In one remote valley, nestled between tall mountains, Thor found a small farming community of perhaps 20 families. They lived simply, growing what they needed in small fields, keeping a few animals, largely cut off from the wider world by the mountains surrounding them. They were peaceful people, causing no trouble, living in harmony with the land and each other. But Thor sensed something wrong in the valley. There was a tension in the air, a wrongness he could not immediately identify. He remained in the valley, appearing as a traveler who had lost his way, and the valley people welcomed him kindly, as was their custom. Over several days, Thor discovered the source of the problem. A dragon had made its lair in the mountains above the valley. It was not yet fully grown, not yet powerful enough to attack the settlement directly, but it was causing problems nonetheless. It had been stealing sheep and goats, taking them back to its cave to eat. The people had lost a significant portion of their herds, and were beginning to worry about having enough animals to survive the next winter. Dragons were ancient creatures, older than gods, remnants of a time before time itself. They were intelligent, cunning, and extremely dangerous. A full-grown dragon could devastate entire regions, burning forests, destroying towns, killing everything in its path. This young dragon was not yet so terrible, but it would become so if allowed to continue growing unchecked. Thor climbed into the mountains alone, following the trail of stolen animals to the dragon's cave. The entrance was a black opening in the mountainside, wide enough for the dragon but uncomfortably narrow for Thor. He entered anyway, hammer ready, stepping into darkness that smelled of sulfur and burnt meat. The dragon was waiting inside, coiled in the depths of the cave, its scales gleaming faintly in the dim light that filtered from outside. It was perhaps 20 feet long, with wings still small and weak, not yet strong enough for true flight, but its eyes burned with ancient intelligence, and smoke curled from its nostrils. The dragon spoke, for dragons could speak all languages. It demanded to know why Thor was disturbing its rest. Thor answered simply. The dragon was stealing from people under Thor's protection, and this could not continue. The dragon laughed, a sound like grinding stones. It said it would eat whatever it wanted, and no god could stop it. It claimed the valley as its hunting ground by right of strength, and if the people did not like it, they could leave or become food themselves. Thor's patience, usually vast, had limits. He had tried to reason with the dragon, to offer it alternatives, to find a peaceful solution. But the dragon's arrogance and cruelty made compromise impossible. Some threats could only be answered with strength. The battle in the cave was brief but intense. The dragon breathed fire, filling the cave with flames that would have incinerated a normal person. But Thor walked through the fire untouched, his divine nature protecting him. The dragon tried to bite him with teeth like swords, but Thor caught its jaws in his hands and held them apart. The dragon thrashed and clawed, but Thor's strength was beyond the young dragon's ability to overcome. In the end, Thor struck with Mjolnir, not killing the dragon but breaking its will and its pride. He dragged the creature from its cave and threw it from the mountains, sending it flying far to the north, into the empty ice fields where it could harm no one. The dragon would survive, but it would not return, having learned that some places were protected by powers greater than itself. Thor returned to the valley and told the people they were safe. He suggested they keep someone watching the mountains, just in case, but he believed the dragon would not return. The people offered Thor everything they had: food, animals, their finest crafts. But Thor accepted only a simple meal and a night's rest in their common hall. He needed no payment for doing what was right. As he left the valley the next morning, walking back over the mountains toward other parts of Midgard, Thor felt the familiar satisfaction of purpose fulfilled. Another threat had been ended. Another community was safe. Another chapter in his endless story had been written. The summer days grew long and hot. Thor walked through lands where heat shimmered on the horizon and the sun beat down with relentless intensity. He saw how different peoples adapted to different conditions, those in hot regions building different houses, wearing different clothes, organizing their lives around the heat, just as northern people organized around the cold. This diversity fascinated Thor. Humans were so adaptable, so creative in solving the problems their environments presented. They were not as strong as gods, or as long-lived as elves, or as skilled as dwarves, but they had something special: the ability to adapt, to change, to find new solutions to new problems. This quality made them worthy of protection, made Thor's work meaningful. He visited coastal settlements where people made their living from the sea, going out in boats each day to catch fish and harvest other treasures from the ocean depths. He watched them work with admiration, seeing how they read the weather, understood the tides, navigated by stars and landmarks. They were brave, these sea people, facing dangers every day that would terrify those who lived on solid land. One evening, Thor sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean, watching fishing boats return to harbor as the sun set. The boats moved slowly across the water, their sails catching the last light of day, each one carrying families back to safety after a day's work. It was a peaceful scene, beautiful in its simplicity. But Thor's sharp eyes noticed something the humans could not yet see. Far out on the horizon, beyond where the fishing boats had traveled, something massive moved through the water. It was too large to be a whale, too purposeful in its movement to be a drifting island of ice. Thor watched carefully, studying the distant shape, and gradually recognized what he was seeing. A sea giant was approaching the coast, swimming up from the deep ocean trenches where such creatures normally live. Sea giants were different from frost giants or mountain giants. They were adapted to life in the water, with features that looked almost fish-like, with scales and fins, and the ability to breathe both water and air. They were rare, usually staying in the deepest parts of the ocean. But occasionally, one would venture toward shore, and when they did, they were extremely dangerous to coastal communities. Thor descended from the cliff and found a small boat on the beach. He pushed it into the water and began rowing toward the approaching giant, moving fast across the wave. As he drew closer, the giant's true size became apparent. It was enormous, easily 50 feet tall, with arms thick as tree trunks, and a face that was somewhere between human and fish, with bulging eyes and a wide mouth full of sharp teeth. The sea giant saw Thor approaching and roared with laughter. What was this tiny person doing, rowing toward it in a boat that the giant could crush with one hand? But as Thor drew closer, the giant recognized him. The red beard, the intense eyes, the hammer resting in the boat. The giant's laughter died. Thor did not attack immediately. He called out across the water, asking the giant why it had come to the shallows, what it sought near human lands. The giant answered sullenly that it was hungry, that it intended to overturn fishing boats and eat the humans inside, that it had every right to hunt where it pleased. Thor shook his head. These waters were under his protection, he said. The people who fished here were under his care. The giant would have to find food elsewhere, in the deep ocean where humans did not venture. The giant could live freely there, but it could not threaten those Thor had sworn to protect. The sea giant refused. It was hungry now, it said, and it would not be denied by any god. It reached for Thor's boat, intending to crush it and Thor together. Thor stood in the boat, which somehow did not capsize despite his movement, and threw Mjolnir with all his strength. The hammer flew true, striking the sea giant in its chest with force like a falling mountain. The giant flew backward, crashing into the water with a splash that sent waves racing toward shore. It sank beneath the surface, stunned. Thor called Mjolnir back to his hand and waited. After a moment, the sea giant's head broke the surface far from where it had fallen. It looked at Thor with new respect and considerable fear, then dove deep and swam away, heading back toward the deep ocean trenches. It would not return. Thor rowed back to shore as twilight deepened into night. The fishing boats had all reached harbor safely, their crews unaware of how close danger had come. Thor pulled his borrowed boat back onto the beach and walked away into the darkness, his work complete, his people safe once more. These were the kinds of battles that filled Thor's days and nights. Not always legendary encounters with famous enemies, but constant vigilance against threats both great and small, known and unknown. Every day brought new challenges, new dangers that needed to be faced and overcome. And every day, Thor met these challenges without complaint, without hesitation, without doubt. The summer continued its warm reign over Midgard. Thor traveled from coast to mountains, from forests to plains, from great cities to tiny villages. Everywhere he went, he checked on the people under his protection, ensuring they were safe, watching for threats, ready to act if needed. He witnessed human life in all its complexity during these travels. He saw weddings, where young people joined their lives together with hope and joy. He saw births, new lives entering the world, small and helpless and perfect. He saw deaths, old people passing peacefully after long lives well lived. He saw the full cycle of human existence, beautiful and tragic, meaningful despite, or perhaps because of, its brevity. These observations deepened Thor's understanding of why his protection mattered. Each human life was a story, brief but complete, filled with joys and sorrows, triumphs and failures, love and loss. Every life protected was a story allowed to continue, to reach its natural conclusion rather than being cut short by preventable disaster. Thor was not just protecting bodies, he was protecting stories, dreams, potential, all the things that made human existence meaningful. One warm summer evening, Thor found himself in a small village celebrating a harvest festival. Though it was only midsummer, not the main autumn harvest, the village was celebrating an early crop that had ripened, providing food when supplies from winter were running low. It was a crucial harvest, and the villagers were grateful and joyful. Thor joined the celebration as an anonymous traveler. He ate simple food, drank mild ale, listened to musicians play, and watched people dance. Children ran between the adults, playing games, laughing with pure joy. Elderly people sat together, talking quietly, sharing memories. Young couples walked hand in hand, their futures stretching before them full of possibility. It was such a simple scene, such an ordinary moment. Nothing dramatic was happening. No great events were unfolding. Just people living their lives, enjoying a moment of happiness together. But Thor found it profoundly moving. This was what he protected. Not grand kingdoms or mighty fortresses, but moments like this. Simple, genuine, human moments of connection and joy. He stayed until late in the evening, then quietly departed, walking into the darkness beyond the village light. The celebration continued behind him. Laughter, and music fading gradually as he moved away. Thor smiled to himself, satisfied, renewed in his purpose. He would continue his eternal work so that moments like this could continue, so that people could gather in peace, so that joy could exist in a world that might otherwise be dominated by fear and suffering. The stars wheeled overhead, marking time, and Thor walked beneath them, steady and patient, continuing his eternal journey through the realms under his protection. His hammer hung at his side, ready but not needed at this moment. His strength was undiminished, his purpose clear, his commitment absolute. This was Thor's life, his choice, his calling, to walk through Midgard season after season, year after year, century after century, always watching, always ready, always present when danger threatened. It was not a burden, but a privilege, not a curse, but a blessing, not a duty, but a joy. The thunder god continued through the warm summer night, moving toward whatever tomorrow might bring, whatever challenges might arise, whatever threats might emerge. He was ready for all of it, prepared for anything, committed to everything. And so the story continues, endless as the turning of the seasons, eternal as the stars above, constant as the earth below. Thor walks through time itself, unchanging in his purpose, unwavering in his dedication, forever the guardian, forever the protector, forever the thunder god who keeps watch while others rest. The cycle of seasons turned again, as it always did, as it always would. Summer gave way to autumn in that gradual way that made it hard to say exactly when one season ended and the next began. The days grew shorter by small increments. The air developed a slight chill in the mornings and evenings. Leaves began their slow transformation from green to the brilliant colors that would mark the autumn landscape. Thor noticed these changes with the eye of someone who had witnessed them countless times. He knew the patterns, understood the rhythms, could predict with near certainty what each day would bring based on signs in the sky and earth. This knowledge was part of his protection, allowing him to anticipate needs before they became urgent, to prepare for problems before they fully emerged. Autumn was a time of preparation. Farmers harvested their crops, gathering the results of a year's careful tending. Hunters went into the forests, seeking to build up stores of meat for the winter. People repaired their homes, fixing roofs and walls, ensuring their dwellings would withstand the storms ahead. Everyone worked with focused intensity, knowing that winter would come regardless of whether they were ready. Thor helped where he could, in ways both large and small. He warned a coastal village of a storm that was approaching faster than they expected, giving them time to secure their boats and buildings. He showed a group of hunters where a herd of deer had gathered, ensuring they would have meat for the difficult months ahead. He helped an old man repair his roof, the two of them working in companionable silence, the old man never knowing he worked alongside a god. These small acts of assistance filled Thor with quiet satisfaction. Not everything required hammer blows and divine power. Sometimes protection meant simply helping, sharing knowledge, offering strength where strength was needed. Thor was as comfortable doing this simple work as he was fighting giants, perhaps more so, for this work connected him directly to the people he protected, reminded him constantly of why his larger battles mattered. One crisp autumn morning, Thor stood in a vast field where dozens of families worked together to bring in the harvest. It was a communal effort, everyone pitching in to help everyone else, ensuring that no family would be left without sufficient food. Children ran between the adults, playing games, while also helping with small tasks appropriate to their size and strength. Elders sat in the shade, watching, offering advice, their presence a blessing and a connection to the past. Thor watched this scene with deep appreciation. This was human nature at its best: cooperation, community, mutual support. They were individually weak compared to gods or giants, but together they were strong, capable of surviving and thriving, despite the many dangers that surrounded them. This strength through community was something Thor understood and valued, even though he himself typically worked alone. As the day progressed and the harvest work continued, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. Thor noticed them immediately, reading their patterns, understanding what they meant. A storm was coming, a powerful one, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. If it arrived before the harvest was complete, Much of the grain would be ruined, and families would face hardship in the winter ahead. The humans noticed the clouds too, and worry spread through the workers. They increased their pace, trying to gather what they could before the storm arrived. But it was clear they would not finish in time. The storm was moving too fast, and there was simply too much grain left in the field. Thor made a decision. He walked to the center of the field, raised Mjolnir toward the darkening sky, and spoke words of power that only the storm could hear. The clouds paused in their advance, held back by Thor's will. The wind, which had been rising, settled to a gentle breeze. The rain, which had been moments from falling, waited in the clouds, suspended by divine intervention. The workers noticed the change immediately. The threatened storm had stopped advancing, giving them the time they needed. They did not question this miracle, but instead worked with renewed energy, knowing they had been granted a gift. By evening, the entire harvest was safely gathered and stored away. Only then did Thor release his hold on the storm, allowing it to continue forward, rain finally falling on empty fields where it could do no harm. Thor left the community as they celebrated their successful harvest, slipping away unnoticed. They attributed their good fortune to luck or the general blessing of the gods, never knowing that Thor himself had stood in their field, holding back a storm so they could complete their work. This was fine with Thor. He did not need recognition. The safe, full storehouses were recognition enough. As autumn deepened and the first frosts arrived, Thor noticed increased activity in Jotunheim, the realm of giants. The giants were preparing for something, gathering in larger numbers than usual, holding councils, forging weapons. Thor observed all this from a distance, trying to determine what the giants were planning. It became clear over time that they were preparing for a major assault on Midgard. Not a single giant causing trouble, but a coordinated attack involving dozens of giants acting together. Such large-scale attacks were rare. Giants usually operated alone or in small groups, but when they occurred, they could devastate entire regions. Thor reported his observations to Odin and the other gods in Asgard. A council was called to discuss how to respond. Some gods wanted to launch a preemptive strike against Jotunheim, attacking the giants before they could attack Midgard. Others suggested strengthening defenses and waiting to see what would happen. Thor listened to these debates with growing frustration. While the gods talked and argued and made plans, the giants continued their preparations. Action was needed, not more discussion. Finally, Thor stood and announced his intention. He would go to Jotunheim alone, confront the giants, and end their threat before it could develop further. Odin tried to counsel caution, suggesting Thor wait for more gods to accompany him, but Thor was determined. This was his responsibility, his people under threat, his duty to act. He left Asgard that same hour, riding across the sky in his chariot, thunder announcing his approach. He did not try to hide his coming. He wanted the giants to know he was on his way, wanted them to understand that their plans had been discovered, wanted to give them a chance to reconsider their foolish aggression. He found the giants gathered in a vast valley in Jotunheim, their numbers indeed impressive. There were at least 50 of them, all massive, all armed with clubs and swords and axes fashioned from stone and ice. They had been preparing for war, and now, war had come to them in the form of a single god with a hammer. The giant leading this gathering was named Thrym, though not the same Thrym who had stolen Mjolnir in an earlier story. This Thrym was a war chief, famous among giants for his strength and his hatred of God. When he saw Thor approaching, he laughed and called his followers to prepare for battle. One god, he proclaimed, even Thor could not stand against so many giants. Thor landed his chariot in front of the assembled giants, thunder rolling across the valley like drums of war. He stepped down and faced the giants alone, his hammer ready, his expression calm. He gave them one chance, calling out across the valley, "Disperse now, abandon this foolish plan," and he would let them live. Continue with this attack, and he would destroy them all. Thrym refused, his pride too great to back down in front of his followers. He gave a signal, and the giants charged, a wave of massive beings rushing toward Thor from all directions. The earth shook with their approach, and their war cries echoed off the surrounding mountains. Thor met them without fear. Mjolnir swung in great arcs, each blow sending a giant flying backward. He moved with impossible speed for someone his size, dodging attacks, striking back, always in motion. Lightning cracked down from the sky, striking giants and leaving them smoking and stunned. Thunder crashed continuously, so loud it was felt rather than heard. The battle raged for hours. Thor fought with perfect focus, never tiring, never slowing, his hammer finding its mark again and again. Giants fell around him like trees in a storm, and those who remained standing grew increasingly fearful. They had believed their numbers would overwhelm even Thor, but they had been wrong. Thor was not just strong. He was battle itself, war given form, the storm made flesh. Thrym finally understood the magnitude of his error. He had led his followers into a battle they could not win. He called for retreat, but it was too late. Thor was everywhere at once, striking down those who tried to run as easily as those who tried to fight. The valley became a graveyard of defeated giants, and Thrym himself fell to Mjolnir's righteous fury. When the battle ended, Thor stood alone in the valley, surrounded by defeated enemies, his hammer crackling with residual lightning. Not one giant had escaped, not one threat remained. The planned assault on Midgard had been ended before it could begin, thwarted by one god who refused to let those under his protection come to harm. Thor returned to Asgard as the sun set, his work complete. The gods who had counseled caution admitted that Thor's direct action had been the right choice. Odin looked at his son with pride, recognizing that Thor's simplicity was often more effective than all the complex planning and strategy others favored. Sometimes the direct approach was best. But Thor did not stay in Asgard to accept praise. He returned immediately to Midgard, checking on the autumn preparations, ensuring everything was proceeding normally. The people there had no idea how close danger had come, no knowledge of the battle fought on their behalf in a distant realm. They simply continued their work, trusting in the protection that surrounded them, believing in the strength that guarded them. This was exactly how Thor wanted it. Let people live without fear, without constant worry about the threats lurking beyond their knowledge. Let them focus on their lives, their work, their families, their simple joys and ordinary concerns. Thor would handle the dangers, face the threats, fight the battle. That was his role, his purpose, his gift to Midgard. Autumn continued its slow march toward winter. The leaves reached their peak color, turning entire forests into tapestries of red, orange, and gold. Then they began to fall, drifting down to carpet the ground, creating a rustling blanket beneath the trees. The air grew colder, frost appearing most mornings, ice forming on still water, the world preparing itself for the deep cold ahead. Thor walked through this changing landscape with appreciation for its beauty. Autumn had a particular quality he loved, a sense of completion, of cycles ending and preparing to begin again, of rest earned after hard work. It was a reflective season, and even Thor, always focused on action and duty, found himself pausing to consider deeper questions during these golden days. He thought about the nature of protection, about what it meant to be a guardian. Was he protecting people from threats, or was he protecting their ability to live freely without being defined by fear? Was his work about preventing specific dangers, or was it about creating space for human flourishing? These questions had no simple answers, and Thor found himself pondering them as he walked through forests of falling leaves. He concluded that it was all of these things and more. Protection was multifaceted, complex in ways that could not be reduced to simple formulas. Each act of protection served multiple purposes, created multiple effects, rippled outward in ways Thor could not fully track or understand. All he could do was his best, acting with good intentions, using his strength in service of those who needed it, trusting that the cumulative effect of his countless small choices would be positive. This realization brought him peace. He did not need to understand everything, did not need to see all the effects of his actions, did not need to measure success precisely. He simply needed to keep working, keep protecting, keep standing between danger and those who could not defend themselves. The rest would take care of itself. As the final days of autumn arrived, and winter's first serious storms gathered on the horizon, Thor felt ready for whatever challenges the cold season would bring. He had protected Midgard through another year, had faced and overcome countless threats, had maintained the watch that never ended, and he would continue to do so, through the coming winter and the spring beyond it, through seasons and years without number, until time itself came to an end. The first snow began to fall as Thor stood on a mountainside overlooking Midgard. Large flakes drifted down from grey skies, covering the brown autumn landscape in pristine white. Winter was beginning, right on schedule, following the eternal pattern that had governed the world since its creation. Thor watched the snow fall for a long time, peaceful in this moment between seasons, this breath before winter's full force arrived. Then he turned and walked down from the mountain, heading toward the settlements below, ready to begin his winter vigil, ready to face whatever the cold months would bring, ready to protect his people through another cycle of and cold. The snow continued falling, soft and silent, covering Thor's footprints as soon as he made them, the world becoming clean and new under winter's gentle touch. And Thor walked on, tireless and patient, the guardian who never rested, the protector who never failed, the eternal thunder god, keeping his sacred watch over the realms entrusted to his care. This is the rhythm of Thor's existence, the pattern of his eternal life. Seasons come and go, years pass like heartbeats, and through it all, Thor remains constant. His strength does not diminish with time. His purpose does not waver with repetition. His commitment does not fade with familiarity. He is as dedicated today as he was in his first moments, as he will be in his last moments, whenever those may come. The story continues forward through time, through the endless cycle of seasons, through the countless moments that make up existence. Thor walks through them all, present in each one, ready for whatever may come, eternally vigilant in his sacred duty as protector of Midgard and guardian of humanity. Rest peacefully in this knowledge. Sleep deeply under his protection. Dream safely in his care. The Thunder God stands watch, as he always has, as he always will, unchanging and eternal, until the end of all days and beyond, into whatever lies past the final moment. This is his promise. This is his purpose. This is his eternal gift to all who live under the vast sky and upon the broad earth. All is well. All is safe. The Guardian watches, and will watch forever.